If the firstling male of thy herd or of thy flock have any blemish, as if it be lame or blind, any ill blemish whatsoever, thou shalt not sacrifice it to Yahweh thy God. Thou shalt eat it within thy gates. The unclean man and the clean man may eat it together, as the gazelle and as the hart. Only thou shalt not eat the blood thereof. Thou shalt pour it out upon the ground as water. Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 16. Observe the month of the Aviv, and thou shalt effectuate the Passover to Yahweh thy God. For in the month of the Aviv, Yahweh thy God brought thee forth out of Mithraim by night. And thou shalt sacrifice the Passover to Yahweh thy God of the flock and the herd, in the place which Yahweh shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. Thou shalt eat no leavened food with it. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened breads therewith, even the bread of affliction, for thou camest forth out of the land of Mithraim in haste, that thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of the land of Mithraim all the days of thy life. And there shall be no leaven seen with thee in all thy borders 7 days, neither shall any of the flesh which thou sacrificest the first day in the even remain all night until the morning. Thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover within any of thy gates, which Yahweh thy God giveth thee, but at the place which Yahweh thy God shall choose to cause his name to dwell in, there thou shalt sacrifice the Passover in the even, as the sun is coming, in the season that thou camest forth out of Mithraim. And thou shalt roast and eat it in the place which Yahweh thy God shall choose. And thou shalt turn in the morning and go to thy tents. 6 days thou shalt eat unleavened breads, and on the 7th day shall be a detaining assembly to Yahweh thy God. Thou shalt do no work therein. 7 weeks shalt thou number to thee, from the time thou beginnest to put the sickle to the standing grain, shalt thou begin to number 7 weeks. And thou shalt keep the festival of weeks to Yahweh thy God, with a tribute of a freewill offering of thy hand, which thou shalt give, according as Yahweh thy God blesseth thee. And thou shalt rejoice before Yahweh thy God, thou and thy son and thy daughter, and thy manservant and thy maidservant, and the Lewi that is within thy gates, and the sojourner, and the fatherless, and the widow, that are in the midst of thee, in the place which Yahweh thy God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in Mithraim, and thou shalt observe and do these statutes. Thou shalt keep the festival of the booths 7 days, after when thou hast gathered in from thy threshing floor and from thy winepress. And thou shalt rejoice in thy festival, thou and thy son and thy daughter, and thy manservant and thy maidservant, and the Lewi, and the sojourner, and the fatherless, and the widow that are within thy gates. 7 days shalt thou keep a festival to Yahweh thy God, in the place which Yahweh shall choose, because Yahweh thy God will bless thee in all thy increase, and in all the work of thy hands, and thou shalt be altogether joyful. 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before Yahweh thy God in the place which he shall choose, in the festival of the unleavened breads, and in the festival of the weeks, and in the festival of the booths, and they shall not appear before Yahweh empty. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of Yahweh thy God, which he hath given thee. Judges and officers shalt thou make thee in all thy gates, which Yahweh thy God giveth thee, according to thy tribes. And they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. Thou shalt not bend justice, thou shalt not respect persons, neither shalt thou take a bribe, for a bribe doth blind the eyes of the wise, and pervert the words of the righteous. That which is altogether just shalt thou follow, that thou mayest live, and inherit the land which Yahweh thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not plant thee a Asherah of any kind of tree beside the altar of Yahweh thy God, which thou shalt make thee. Neither shalt thou set thee up a pillar, which Yahweh thy God hateth. Thou shalt not sacrifice to Yahweh thy God an ox or a sheep wherein is a blemish, or anything evil, for that is an abomination to Yahweh thy God. If there be found in the midst of thee, within any of thy gates, which Yahweh thy God giveth thee, man or woman that doeth that which is evil in the sight of Yahweh thy God, in transgressing his covenant, and hath gone and served other gods, and worshipped them, or the sun or the moon, or any of the host of the skies, which I have not commanded, and it be told thee, and thou hast heard of it, then shalt thou inquire diligently, and behold, if it be true, and the thing certain, that such abomination is wrought in Israel, then shalt thou bring forth that man or that woman who hath done this evil thing to thy gates, even the man or the woman, and thou shalt stone them to death with stones. At the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses shall he that is to die be put to death. At the mouth of 1 witness he shall not be put to death. The hand of the witnesses shall be first upon him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people. So thou shalt put away the evil from the midst of thee.